The night the thieves chose to break into Senator John Kennedy's mansion was the same night a hard north wind swept across Louisiana, rocking the ancient cypress trees around his property like restless spirits. The moon was thin, barely a sliver, and the long gravel driveway leading up to the house glittered faintly in the cold light. It was a bad night for mistakes, but the three men hiding in the shadows had already committed the first one. They believed John Kennedy was an easy man to rob. For weeks they'd watched the property. They'd seen the size of the place, the columns, the dark windows, and they imagined a soft, wealthy target who probably slept heavy and kept expensive things lying around. They thought they understood him, a politician with a gentle tone and slow drawl who surely lived as comfortably and carelessly as he spoke. They were very, very wrong. "Tonight," whispered Dax, the leader of the trio, pulling his black mask over his face. "In and out in 10 minutes. The old man won't even know." His partners, Rook and Milo, nodded. Rook was nervous, Milo was overconfident. Dax didn't bother assessing his team. He had planned everything, or so he believed. Across the massive property, inside the dimly lit mansion, Senator John Kennedy stood barefoot on the hardwood floor of his library, sipping hot tea and reading. His hound, Beauregard, snored at his feet, tail twitching in some dreamland pursuit. Kennedy wasn't expecting trouble, but he wasn't unprepared either. His father had taught him long ago that good men could expect bad people to test them sooner or later. Outside, Dax gestured toward the back entrance. "Motion cameras are looped, window alarms disabled. We're ghosts." Ghosts, yes, but ghosts walking into a trap they didn't know existed. They crept silently across the manicured lawn, boots sinking into the wet ground. Rook paused at the edge of the porch, eyeing the door. "Feels wrong," he muttered. "Because you think too much," Milo sneered. "Let's go." Dax pulled out his tools, knelt, and began working the back lock. It clicked open almost too easily. Rook felt the hairs rise on his arms. "See," Milo smirked. "Rich people never expect trouble." The door slid open with a quiet creak. They stepped into darkness. The air inside felt cool, still, and clean. Too still, too clean. Rook wanted to whisper again but Dax waved him off. "Living room is to the right, office to the left. We find the safe, grab anything shiny, and get out." A faint sound echoed down the hallway. Beauregard's tail thumped once on the wooden floor. The thieves froze. Dax raised a finger. Silence. He nodded sharply, and the three moved deeper into the house, unaware that small hidden sensors in the walls tracked every heat signature that crossed them. John Kennedy was still in the library, but now he was listening. Carefully, quietly, he set his teacup on its saucer, placed the book down, and touched a discreet button behind his bookshelf. Lights didn't flash, sirens didn't wail. The system was made precisely for moments like this, silent, selective, and effective. In the hallway, Dax signaled Rook to check the office while he and Milo moved toward the main living room. Rook pushed the office door open, saw polished mahogany furniture, tauntingly untouched. A small lamp illuminated stacks of paper, books, and framed photos. The safe, he knew, had to be behind one of the paintings. He stepped inside. The door clicked closed behind him. He jumped back, turning, gripping his flashlight like a weapon, but the handle wouldn't budge. "What, Dax?" he whispered urgently. "Dax, the door." He didn't finish. A voice came from a small speaker overhead. "Son, you might want to calm yourself before you hyperventilate in my office." Rook froze. Kennedy's voice, recognizable anywhere, calm, steady, almost polite. "This is private property," the senator continued. "Now, I don't mind company, but I surely do mind uninvited company that arrives dressed like a raccoon and fiddling with my belongings." Rook's breath shook. We thought the house was empty." "That's mistake number one," Kennedy replied. "And trust me, you're about to realize there were many more." In the living room, Dax and Milo reached for a painting on the wall, only to hear a barely audible hum. Beneath their boots, the floor vibrated. Milo frowned. "What is that?" Dax didn't answer. His instinct screamed at him, danger. Then the lights snapped on, flooding the room in brightness. Beauregard stood in the doorway, teeth bared, growling with a low, rumbling warning that made the hairs on both thieves' necks stand straight up. Behind him, John Kennedy stepped into view. He wasn't holding a weapon. He didn't look afraid. He stood in jeans, a faded t-shirt, and a calm expression that was somehow far more intimidating than anger. "Evening, gentlemen," he said, leaning casually against the doorframe. "I see you've made yourselves right at home. I'd offer you tea, but I don't think we're gonna be friends that long. Milo reached for the knife in his belt. Don't, Kennedy warned softly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Beauregard's growl deepened, the dog's eyes fixed with cold precision. Dax swallowed hard. Look, Senator, we didn't mean anything. You just broke into my home, Kennedy finished for him. You just locked your buddy in my office. And you just tried to rob a man who's been dealing with nonsense for decades. He shook his head slowly. Bad choices all around. Milo stepped forward. We weren't gonna hurt nobody. Kennedy raised an eyebrow. Son, if you weren't planning trouble, then why did you come dressed for Halloween and carrying enough hardware to redecorate my floors with blood? Milo's face reddened. Kennedy sighed, rubbing his forehead. Lord help me, I don't know why y'all pick me. I really don't. There are easier houses, nicer ones, ones without a retired sheriff deputy down the road, or a dog with better judgment than most people I meet in Washington. Dax tried to think, tried to find a way out. But the room felt smaller by the second. Let us go, he said finally. We'll leave. No harm done. Kennedy's eyes sharpened, steel replacing gentleness. No harm done, son. You crossed 3 no trespassing signs, disabled my cameras, and crept into my home while I was reading. He stepped forward. That's not, no harm. That's begging for consequences. Milo glanced toward the back door, but a soft mechanical click told him it had locked automatically. Panic rose in his chest. Inside the office, Rook sat on the floor, head in his hands, listening to everything through the speaker. His heart pounded. Why didn't we check who we were robbing? He muttered shakily. Kennedy entered the living room fully now, hands in his pockets, the picture of controlled authority. Here's what's gonna happen, he said. You're gonna sit down on that sofa like civilized miscreants, and you're gonna wait for the sheriff. Milo barked a laugh, panicked, desperate. We're not getting arrested. Kennedy blinked slowly. Son, you are in my living room with a knife, a mask, and a plan to steal. I'm afraid that ship has sailed right past common sense and straight into stupidity. Dax clenched his fists. We're leaving. Kennedy whistled once, sharp, commanding. Beauregard lunged, not to attack, just to intimidate. The dog's paws slammed onto the floor, his snarl echoing like thunder. Milo shrieked and stumbled backward, tripping over his own feet, and crashing into a side table. Dax froze, hands raised. Good boy, Kennedy murmured, patting the dog's head. Then he fixed the thieves with a gaze that could cut through brick. Sit down. They sat. Minutes passed in strained silence. Milo trembled. Dax stared at the floor. In the office, Rook whispered apologies to no one in particular. Finally, Kennedy spoke again. Y'all picked the wrong house. You thought I was soft because I talk slow. People think that sometimes. They forget that I grew up in Louisiana, not on a yacht. They forget my folks taught me how to handle trouble long before I ever saw the inside of the Senate. He paced in front of them, slow, controlled. And they forget that kindness is not weakness. It's restraint. Outside, the sound of distant sirens became faintly audible. Dax's jaw tightened. Please, he said quietly. Don't turn us in. We messed up but, we're not killers. Kennedy studied him, not with cruelty, not with pity, just with understanding. I believe you, he said. But believing you doesn't erase what you did. The sirens grew louder. Milo buried his face in his hands. We're going to jail. Kennedy shrugged. Actions have consequences. And if you're lucky, consequences can teach you something before the world teaches you something worse. The sheriff's vehicles rolled onto the property, tires crunching the gravel. Red and blue lights reflected across the walls. Officers approached the front door, weapons drawn but steady. Kennedy turned toward the hallway speaker. Rook, son, I'm going to have someone open that door for you. Try not to faint. The trapped thief whimpered. The sheriff entered. Senator, everyone safe. Safe and accounted for, Kennedy replied. These boys came to do wrong, panicked when wrong stared back, and now they're realizing regret is a mighty fast teacher. The officers quickly cuffed Dax and Milo. Another freed Rook, who stumbled out with shaking legs. As they were escorted toward the waiting vehicles, Dax turned back. Why didn't you hurt us? You could've. Kennedy tilted his head thoughtfully. Son, if I hurt every fool who made a dumb decision, I'd never have time for breakfast. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. But I will say this, if you break into a man's home in the middle of the night, you should be grateful if the worst thing he gives you is a lecture. The thieves were loaded into the cars, doors slammed shut, and engines rumbled to life. As they drove off, Kennedy stood on his porch, Beauregard sitting proudly beside him. The wind still blew. The night was still cold. But the house felt peaceful again. Kennedy scratched Beauregard's ears. "Good job tonight, buddy." The dog wagged his tail. Inside, the house returned to stillness. Kennedy picked up his tea, now lukewarm, and shook his head with a tired chuckle. "Lord," he muttered, "give me strength. And maybe a quieter tomorrow." But deep down, he doubted tomorrow would be quiet. Life rarely stayed calm around him. Trouble had a funny way of finding John Kennedy, and regretting it instantly.